Welcome back, everybody. Well, it should come as no surprise that one of my all-time favorite songs is "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel. I mean, it's literally just history. He starts, I forget the year he starts in, I think it's the late 1940s, and he kind of works through several years up into the 60s, and then it kind of jumps all the way to the 80s, but the whole thing is just one historical nod after another. Harry Truman, Doris Day, Red China, Johnny Ray, South Pacific, Walter Winchell, Joe DiMaggio. You know, that's 1 year, and then he goes on to Joe McCarthy, Richard Nixon, Studebaker Television, North Korea, South Korea, Marilyn Monroe. And so it's just one thing after another. And a lot of people have asked me to do a video where I break down that song, and I'll probably do that at some point, but then this appeared in my recommended videos. It's from a channel called Hildegard von Blingen, and as I peruse the channel, apparently what they do is they take modern songs and they put like a medieval bard spin on it. And this is "We Didn't Start the Fire" bardcore medieval Renaissance style cover. And I haven't listened to it yet. I played like the first 30 seconds of it to see if it was the same song in a different style or it was new lyrics. And it's apparently all new lyrics. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch it. I'll put the link down in the description so you can watch and listen to it without my commentary, and check out the other stuff on the video or on the channel. It's really interesting stuff. And I'm not going to break down every single one of these because it'll be like an hour-long video if we do that. It's only a 4-minute video. So I'll pause every so often and kind of talk about a few of the things that they mention, because there's a lot, and there's even definitely some things in here that I won't know enough about to talk about. So before we dive into this video, though, I want to thank Grayson in Collierville, Tennessee. Grayson just signed up as a patron a couple of weeks ago, and I want to thank you for your support on Patreon. A huge reason why I'm able to keep this channel going is because of our support from our members and our patrons. Let's go ahead and dive into this one. All right, this should be interesting. I love the sunglasses.
Eleanor of Aquitaine, Charles VI hath gone insane, Reconquista, Geoffrey, Chaucer, Michelangelo.
Okay, so I'll try to let each of these phrases go before I talk about it. So there's a lot there already. I mean, Charles the Mad, who's a French king who is known to have not only had insanity but passed that on to other members of his family. We started right with Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was a very wealthy heiress who first marries the King of France and then ends up marrying the King of England and bringing with her that land, Aquitaine, which is a good chunk of southwestern France. And so for a little while anyway, until they blow it all, the kings of England are going to control big chunks of France, too. Michelangelo, of course, a very famous artist from Italy. And I forget who else we talked about there, but that's probably good enough to start.
Marco Polo, Magna Carta, Christian Schism, Siege of Acre, Byzantine Iconoclasm, Guillaume de Machaut.
All right, so Siege of Acre. Acre is in kind of the northern part of the territory of, you can call it Israel, Palestine, Judea. And a lot of the crusades center around Acre as one of the jumping off points and one of the focal points of that fighting. But I forget what else. Magna Carta we talked about in that one. So the Great Charter that is signed between the barons and King John. It's kind of considered to be the godfather of all future things like the U.S. Constitution. It's basically laying out some basic rights that people should not only have, but expect from their government, from their monarch.
Charlemagne, Alfred, Anne Boleyn without a head. Few things here to read, but the Nibelungen Lied.
I have no idea what the Nibelungen Lied is, but Anne Boleyn obviously is the second wife of Henry VIII, who he has beheaded on trumped-up charges of adultery, including with her brother, who's also beheaded, and a couple other guys too. Charlemagne, Charles the Great, is the Holy Roman Emperor who rules what is today France, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, and northern Italy. Really kind of the father of modern Europe in a lot of ways. There was somebody else we talked about in there too. Who was it? Oh, Alfred. So Alfred the Great. He's the only English monarch to be called the Great. Well, no, I think there was one other one. Was it Canute? But he doesn't rule over all of England, but he has this dream of uniting England, and that'll happen, I think, under his grandson. But he was not a particularly strong warrior type, but he was very intellectual and very shrewd politically.
Castile with Aragon, second Pope in Avignon, Novgorod, Genghis Khan, Beowulf to Cameron.
Wow, so there's a lot there. So Castile and Aragon are two separate Spanish kingdoms who eventually unite and form Spain. The Decameron is famous writing, as is Beowulf. What else did we have in there?
Second Pope in
Okay, so we had a second pope in Avignon. Avignon, France, you had kind of rival popes at different times in history. So you had a pope in Rome or in the Papal States or somewhere in Italy, depending on what was going on over there. And then you had another one in Avignon in southern France.
the fire.
'Twas always burning.
The world was turning. We did not start the fire. No, we did not light it, but we tried
Nice.
to fight it. Henry Tudor, Saladin, Richard, and the Winter King.
Henry Tudor, we know. So actually, Henry Tudor. Typically, when we talk about Henry Tudor, we're talking about Henry VII, who you see on the right in this picture. His son is Henry VIII, who would also be a Tudor. The Tudor dynasty is Henry VII after he defeats Richard III, who you see on the left in this picture at the Battle of Bosworth. Henry Tudor is the first Tudor king. His son Arthur is the Prince of Wales, but he dies. Then Henry VIII becomes the second Tudor king. And then in succession, his three children, Edward VI. And actually, I should point out while I'm thinking about all of this, is that Richard III is Henry VIII's uncle. He is actually the grandson of Edward IV, who was Richard III's brother. So Richard III would be Henry VIII's great uncle, I guess you would say. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Henry VII, Henry VIII, Edward VI, Mary the First, and then Elizabeth the First. Those are your Tudor monarchs.
England is far, Norse raids, children on crusade. Rome gone, Castile, Mona Lisa, King John.
So Rome is sacked a number of times during the medieval period. One of the most famous ones happens in 1527. That's when you have the famous last stand of the Swiss Guard at the Vatican, protecting the Pope and getting him to Castel Sant'Angelo to safety. He's eventually captured anyway, but at least he doesn't die in that initial attack. King John, we've already talked about.
Kalmar Union, Hanseatic trade. Kipchaks,
So the Hanseatic League is a famous trade organization.
horseback, Constantinople sack, Song of Roland, silk demand, Wallachia, Holy Land.
So Constantinople's sacked in 1453. It ends what's left of the original Roman Empire, and a lot of people point to that as the end of the medieval period. That's where the Ottoman conquest of what is now Istanbul was complete. Holy Land, of course, is the area around Jerusalem and its surrounding territory that's fought over in the Crusades. There was something else that we talked about in there too that I was going to mention.
Constantinople sack, Song of Roland, silk demand, Wallachia, Holy Land.
So Wallachia is part of modern Romania, and that's the part that's ruled over by none other than Vlad the Impaler, who we know as Dracula.
Grunwald, Manzikert, Barbarossa, Golden Spurs, Joan of Arc, Patriarch, Battle of Lepanto.
A lot there, a lot of references to battles in the medieval period, including the Battle of the Golden Spurs, but we'll go ahead and keep going here.
Start the fire. 'Twas always burning as the world was turning. We did not start the fire.
I like it. I like it a
No,
lot.
we did not light it, but we tried to fight it. Canterbury, Give Boris alchemy, Marchashko Venus.
Canterbury is, of course, he mentioned earlier Geoffrey Chaucer, I think all the way back at the beginning, who's a famous writer. He writes the Canterbury Tales. But Canterbury is, the Archbishop of Canterbury is the top first Catholic and then later Church of England Archbishop in the hierarchy of the church in England.
Cancrum, Sicily, Normans land in Italy.
Normans landed, the Northmen landed everywhere. People forget that the Vikings weren't just raiding Britain. They were heading to Iceland. They end up in North America briefly. They attacked Paris. They make it all the way down to Rome. They're all over the place. And so the Normans are the descendants of those Norsemen, these Northmen that are given some territory by the French king in return for them not raiding Paris anymore.
Hippodrome, Notre Dame, Timor in Afghanistan, double prince, homicide, 7 papal regicide.
All right, so there's a lot there to talk about. Some of those are self-explanatory, but let's talk specifically about the princes in the tower. We're talking about the sons, the only surviving sons of King Edward IV. We talked earlier about the relationships with all those folks, and so these would be the nephews of Richard III. Richard III usurps the throne using Parliament to do it. So Edward V, who is the older of the two princes in the tower, his younger brother Richard, the Duke of York, is the other one, takes the throne. He has Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville declared invalid because he had a pre-contract with a woman named Eleanor Butler. It's a lot, but then the princes are slowly less and less seen until they disappear altogether. And the Tudor story, once Henry Tudor takes the throne from Richard III, is that Richard had his nephews killed so he could solidify his hold on power. Others argue that that's Tudor propaganda, that Henry Tudor had just as much reason to have them killed, and that maybe Henry Tudor's mother had something to do with it. In the late 1600s, they found some bones under some stairs in the White Tower, which is kind of the main part of the Tower of London. They are buried in Westminster Abbey. I believe, I'm trying to remember, but I think they're in the same room as Elizabeth and Mary are in, because these would be their uncles, their great uncles, and they're great uncles, and so they've never been tested, so we don't know for sure what happened to the princes in the tower for sure.
Edinburgh, Malta, Venceslas, Bohemia.
So Venceslas is, I think, from Bohemia. Bohemia is kind of what we call Czechoslovakia. Now it's Czech Republic and Slovakia. I think Bohemia would be kind of in the middle there, more toward, I don't really remember. But who else did we mention there just a second ago? Edinburgh. Edinburgh is the capital of Scotland. Mansa Musa is argued by many people to be the wealthiest known person who's ever lived.
Ghazi, Gutenberg, Baghdad, and Mosul burn, gunpowder twofold, panic, it's the Mongols.
So again, some of those are self-explanatory. Gutenberg does not, I don't think, invent the printing press, but he's the first one to really, there had been other things similar to it, and we've talked about this before. Anytime there's an invention, there will be arguments over who invented it, because every person who perfects an invention builds on the work that other people made. And so there had been things like printing presses here and there throughout history, but Gutenberg perfects it. He puts it to use in Europe, and it transforms the world because now you can mass produce things instead of having to handwrite books. And the Gutenberg Bible is printed, and we have a few copies of that left, of those original printings.
Did not start the fire. It was always burning as the world was turning. We did not start the fire. No, we did not light it, but we tried to fight it.
I told my kids about this song, so then they had to play for me. My youngest son said there was one where these two teenagers did it as a school project, and they did like the 1900s to the 1930s, and he showed it to me. It was really good. Pretty low key and not great singing, but it was quite good. And then my daughter showed me one for Harry Potter.
Antioch, Sassanids, Spaniards in a strange land, Fatimids, Elcid, Ottoman invasion.
So a lot of things to do with Spain there, and of course Spain is on the front lines in dealing with Muslim expansion as they move up from Africa across to Gibraltar and start moving into the Iberian Peninsula. And so Spain's really on the front lines there, but of course there's Muslim expansion that's happening that moves up as far as in toward modern day France, and you had the Battle of Tours that stops that. That was much, much earlier than the medieval period, though.
Ashadun, Arabia, Christian relic mania, Hussites, Swiss pikes, executing Templar knights.
I shouldn't say it was earlier than, but it was early in the medieval period. Templar Knights are very famously kind of demonized, I think, by the French, and many of them get executed.
Lichtenauer's Canterbury, holding up the Pechenegs, Black Plague, here to stay. What else do I dare to say?
Black Plague is one of the things that defines medieval history because it will come in and wipe out a third or even a half of many communities in Europe. Completely transforms those places. Just imagine for a second if suddenly half the people in your country died. What that would do to the infrastructure, to food, to transportation, to work, to just dealing with the bodies themselves. A mess.
Did not start the fire, 'twas always burning as the world was turning. We did not start the fire, no, we did not light it, but we tried to fight it. Nicaea troubadours, William Wallace torn in four.
William Wallace torn in four. So he's very famously one of the first people to ever suffer hanging, drawing, and quartering. It was significantly worse than what they show in the movie Braveheart. Because first he would have been hanged as he was shown in Braveheart, but then they actually cut off your genitals and throw them in the fire in front of you. They disembowel you and throw that in the fire. Then you're beheaded and torn to pieces, and then they take the quarters of you and send them to different parts of the kingdom as a warning.
Falkirk, Glassworks, Stamford Bridge, Gupta.
So Stamford Bridge is the battle that happens before the more famous Battle of Hastings. So you actually have kind of three competing claimants to the throne. You have Harold Godwinson, who is the King of England, who kind of takes the throne initially. And so then you have Harold Hardrada, who comes in more from the north part of London, or north of London. And so Harold Godwinson goes north with his army. He defeats Harold Hardrada. Then he has to immediately then turn south and deal with William the Bastard, the Duke of Normandy. And he doesn't win that battle.
Three of famine medicine, Barons ousted sovereign, Carriage versus
Let me take a look. Who are we talking about? Barons ousting sovereign.
Three of
Richard
famine
II?
medicine, Barons ousted.
I would guess we're talking about Richard II here. He's ousted, though I don't think that would have been under the barons. But when we think of monarchs who are overthrown in the medieval period in England, you're talking about John, who has to fight for his throne. He doesn't really get overthrown, but they send in a French king, Louis, who briefly claims the throne of England. But then when John dies, his son becomes Henry III, and that kind of puts an end to a French claimant to the throne. Of course, they were all French anyway. Richard II is overthrown by his cousin Henry Bolingbroke, who becomes Henry IV. Then you have the Wars of the Roses after that.
Sovereign, Carriage versus Jacques Le Brie, Carraxale across the sea, Walpurgis, Fechtburg, Haslan and the Seljuks, Clontarfs,
yeah.
Lombards, Habs.
Lombards are a fringe group of Christianity who are declared to be heretics. The Habsburgs, of course, you see the chin there. They were known for the Habsburg chin, and they rule many of the major powers in Europe. Battle of Bannockburn is, I'm pausing a lot here, I know, is the battle in which Robert the Bruce leads Scotland to its independence by defeating the army of Edward II. Church denied by Thomas More. So Thomas More is my kid's ancestor. And he very famously is executed on orders of Henry VIII because he would not acknowledge Henry as head of the church in England. And he famously, when he goes to the scaffold to be executed, he says, "Tell the king I died his good servant, but God's first."
Denied by Thomas More, Montezuma is no more. Curse this German peasants' war, I can't take it anymore. We did not start the fire.
That was awesome.
It was always burning as the world was turning. We did not start the fire, but when we are gone, it will still burn on and on and on and on. We did not start.
I love it. That was awesome. I really enjoyed that.
It was always burning as the world was turning. We did not start the fire. No, we did not light it, but we tried to fight it.
All right, that was fantastic. I really enjoyed that a lot. So if you've got suggestions for other things like that you think would be interesting to check out, please let me know in the comment section below. Also, let's obviously I didn't want to be there all day, so I didn't talk about every single thing, and there were some things I didn't really know a lot about to talk about. So if there's something that popped out at you that maybe I didn't mention, go ahead and use the comment section below. Let's learn together and use this as an opportunity to do that. I want to thank Anthony in Archer Lodge, North Carolina, and also Ryan in Bellingham, Washington, for your support on Patreon. If you want to learn more how you can support on Patreon, there's a link down in the description. It's patreon.com/VTH. You can check it out there. Thanks for watching.